They were powerful, they were revolutionary, and they were built to dominate the toughest fields on Earth, from twin-engine monsters that could rip through acres in a single pass, to futuristic four-wheel drive machines packed with technology decades ahead of their time. These tractors were meant to change farming forever. But not all stories end in glory. Some were too heavy, too complex, or just too far ahead of what farmers really wanted. They promised power and progress, but instead they disappeared into history. Today, we're uncovering 10 forgotten four-wheel drive tractors from the 70s and 80s, machines that should have ruled the fields but ended up as legends lost in time. And trust me, the last one is so extreme, it's almost impossible to believe it ever existed. Number 1. Versatile 1150. In the late 1970s, when farmers were obsessed with horsepower and size, one tractor rose above them all, literally. It was called the Versatile 1150, and it wasn't just big, it was a monster. Built between 1977 and 1981 in Winnipeg, Canada, the 1150 was Versatile's most powerful tractor ever, and one of the most extreme 4WD machines of its era. Under its long, square hood sat a 14.8-liter Cummins NTC 805 turbocharged diesel engine, cranking out a staggering 470 horsepower. That made it one of the most powerful tractors in the world, decades before modern giants broke the 500-horse barrier. Every inch of the 1150 was designed for raw strength. Its articulated steel frame, planetary final drives, and full-time 4WD system gave it the ability to pull the largest implements ever seen on North American farms. When that massive Cummins fired up, you didn't just hear it, you felt it rumble through the ground. In the field, the 1150 was unstoppable. It could drag 70-foot cultivators, deep-rip dry prairie soil, and turn over more acres in a day than most tractors could in a week. Farmers who used it said it was like driving a freight train across the plains. But its size was both its glory and its curse. The 1150 was huge, nearly 24,000 pounds bare, burning fuel at an astonishing rate. Its maintenance costs were equally massive, and for smaller operations it was simply too much machine. When the 1980s farm crisis hit, sales collapsed, and the mighty 1150 quietly disappeared from production. Only a few hundred were ever built, and even fewer survive today. Those that do are cherished by collectors and farmers who remember the golden age of big horsepower. The Versatile 1150 wasn't just a tractor, it was the embodiment of 1970s farm engineering gone wild. Built for limitless fields and fearless farmers, it proved that Versatile could stand toe-to-toe with giants like Steiger and Big Bud. Number 2. Case 2470. Traction King. When you think of tough, all-American 4WD tractors, few names fit better than Case. And in the 1970s, nothing carried that reputation better than the Case 2470 Traction King, a rugged, no-nonsense machine that symbolized durability and brute strength. Introduced in 1974, the 2470 was powered by a 504 cubic inch Case 6-cylinder turbo diesel producing around 250 horsepower. It featured a full-time four-wheel drive system, a power shift transmission, and a design that looked ready for war: square lines, a massive hood, and thick ironclad axles. This was a tractor built to pull, plow, and survive anything thrown at it. The cab of the 2470 was surprisingly advanced for its time, featuring air conditioning, ergonomic controls, and excellent visibility. Farmers appreciated its straightforward engineering. Everything was heavy-duty, overbuilt, and built to last. It was part of Case's iconic Traction King series, which became famous across the Midwest for their dependability. But like many bold machines of the era, it had its flaws. The tractor's sheer weight and torque sometimes caused driveline wear, and its fuel consumption was legendary. Yet, for many farmers, those were small prices to pay for unmatched pulling power. The 2470's articulation and traction made it ideal for deep ripping and heavy tillage in tough soils where 2WD tractors struggled. Production of the 2470 continued until the early 1980s, when Case introduced the more powerful 4090 and 4690 models. Even then, many 2470s stayed in service for decades, proving their endurance. Today, you can still find them working on small farms or preserved by collectors. Faded orange paint, rusted steel, but engines that still roar like thunder. The Case 2470 was more than a tractor. It was a working symbol of 1970s American toughness, built during a time when machinery was made to last. Number 3. Minneapolis-Moline A4T1600. Before giants like Steiger and Versatile dominated the 4WD market, Minneapolis-Moline had already taken a bold step into articulated four-wheel drive territory with the A4T series. Introduced in 1970, the A4T1600 was a tractor that blended innovation with brute force. It was one of the first American tractors to offer a true articulated frame and four-wheel drive in a compact farmer-friendly design. Under the hood, the A4T1600 packed a 9.6-liter six-cylinder diesel engine, producing approximately 170 horsepower, though a gasoline and LPG version were also available. Its defining feature was the massive articulation joint at the center, capable of a 44-degree turn and 15-degree oscillation, remarkable maneuverability for its size. It gave the A4T excellent traction and balance, making it ideal for heavy plowing and tillage in tough soil conditions. The tractor's styling was pure late 60s industrial design. Square lines, massive tires, and a cab perched high above the articulating chassis. Minneapolis-Moline even added comfort options like a sound-dampened operator station, which was a luxury for the era. Farmers appreciated its ability to pull larger implements while maintaining relatively easy handling, but its timing was unfortunate. The 1970s were a turbulent period for which soon merged with white farm equipment. Corporate restructuring led to the A4T being rebranded as the Oliver 2655 and later as the White Plainsman, confusing buyers and fragmenting its identity. Production ended by 1972, with only a few hundred built. The A4T1600 faded quickly, overshadowed by the rising popularity of Steiger and John Deere 4WDs. Yet, it played an important role in shaping the next generation of powerful, articulated tractors. Today, collectors see it as a rare gem, a bridge between the old-school 2WD machines and the modern 4WD monsters that followed. Its rarity and pioneering design make the A4T1600 one of the most fascinating forgotten tractors of its time. Number 4. International Harvester 2+2 Series. The late 1970s were tough for International Harvester. Facing debt and fierce competition, IH needed a bold innovation, and they found it in the 2+2 series. Introduced in 1979, the IH3388 and IH3588 were unlike anything else on the market. They weren't traditional articulated tractors, nor were they standard row crop machines. They were something entirely new. IH called them 2+2, meaning 2 wheels up front and 2 behind, but all driven. The 2+2's design flipped convention. Instead of having the engine behind the front axle, IH engineers placed it ahead of the articulation point, giving the tractor an unusual long nose profile. The cab sat on the rear half, and the articulation joint allowed the front section to steer and oscillate independently. The result was a machine with superior traction, balance, and weight distribution. With horsepower ratings between 130 and 170, the 2+2 was powerful enough for serious fieldwork yet compact enough for row crop farming. Operators loved its traction and comfort. Its quiet control center cab was among the best of its time, but some found the layout awkward. The long hood made it harder to maneuver in tight spaces, and its unconventional look turned off conservative buyers. Still, the tractor performed exceptionally well in muddy conditions and on steep ground, where 2WD tractors often failed. Despite its engineering brilliance, the 2+2 never reached commercial success. IH's financial collapse in the early 1980s doomed the line. By 1984, production had ceased, and the innovative concept disappeared with it. Ironically, its design was decades ahead of its time. Modern 4WD tractors use similar articulation and balance principles. Today, the IH 2+2 is a cult favorite among collectors, Praised for its futuristic design and remembered as one of the boldest, most misunderstood tractors of its era. Number 5. Allis-Chalmers 440. The Allis-Chalmers 440 was a brute of a machine and one of the most powerful tractors ever to wear the AC badge. Introduced in 1973, it was Allis-Chalmers' first serious entry into the 4WD market, a segment dominated by Steiger and John Deere. To save development costs, AC partnered with Steiger Tractor Company to produce the 440. Essentially, it was a Steiger Cougar painted in AC's signature orange and fitted with AC badging. Under the hood, the 440 roared with a 9.1-liter Cummins V8 diesel engine, churning out around 218 horsepower. The tractor weighed nearly 20,000 pounds, giving it immense traction for pulling large plows and cultivators. It featured full-time 4WD, an articulated frame, and a spacious cab with air conditioning, luxuries that few farmers could imagine a decade earlier. In terms of capability, the 440 could go toe-to-toe with anything else on the market. However, its success was short-lived. The 440 was expensive, priced at nearly $38,000 in the early 1970s, and arrived at a time when the global oil crisis made farmers cautious about investing in fuel-hungry machines. Its massive V8 engine, though powerful, guzzled diesel at an alarming rate. Maintenance costs were also high, and its sheer size made it impractical for smaller farms. As a result, only about 1,000 units were built before Allis-Chalmers quietly discontinued it. Despite its short life, the 440 made headlines for its raw power and modernity. It demonstrated that Allis-Chalmers could build, or at least badge, a tractor that stood with the best of them. But when AC developed its own in-house 4WD lineup later in the decade, including the 8550, the 440 became a forgotten chapter in the company's history. Today, surviving units are collector's treasures, massive, rare, and instantly recognizable. The Allis 440 may not have conquered the market, but it left behind an unforgettable legacy of orange power. Number 6. Massey Ferguson 1200. The Massey Ferguson 1200 was a bold statement of British engineering ambition in the 1970s, a time when Massey Ferguson sought to prove it could rival the power and sophistication of America's growing 4WD tractor industry. Launched in 1971, the MF 1200 was Massey's first fully articulated four-wheel drive tractor, designed specifically for large-scale European and British farms that demanded more horsepower and traction than ever before. At its core, the MF 1200 was powered by a Perkins 6.354 six-cylinder diesel engine, delivering around 105 horsepower. It wasn't about raw muscle, it was about balanced performance and innovative design. Massey Ferguson engineers built the tractor around a central articulation joint that allowed a remarkable degree of flexibility, giving the machine the ability to pivot and maintain traction even on uneven terrain. It featured a rugged driveline, an efficient hydraulic system, and a new standard of operator comfort for the era. The large enclosed cab with panoramic visibility, sound insulation, and easy-to-reach controls made it far more comfortable than traditional open-air tractors. One of the MF 1200's quirkiest design features was its integrated 70-gallon fuel tank mounted behind the driver's seat in the rear cab bulkhead. This design decision helped with weight distribution, but made refueling a rather unusual task. Despite its engineering innovation, the MF 1200 faced challenges. It was expensive, heavy, and larger than what most British farmers were used to operating. On smaller farms, it was considered overkill, while on larger operations, competitors like Ford and County were already offering simpler, equally capable 4WD models. Production ran until 1979, but only a few hundred units were sold in the UK and Europe. The MF 1200 was later overshadowed by more powerful successors like the MF 1500 and 1800, which expanded on the concept with bigger engines and more horsepower. Still, the 1200 remains an icon of British tractor design, a daring, ahead-of-its-time machine that symbolized a shift toward power and sophistication in European farming. Today, restored MF-1200s are prized among collectors, serving as a reminder of the decade when Massey Ferguson dared to build big. Number 7. Steiger Tiger III ST470. In the world of big tractors, few names command as much respect as Steiger. And among their legendary lineup, one model stood above them all, both in size and in spirit. It was called the Steiger Tiger III ST470, and when it rolled out in the early 1980s, it was nothing short of a monster. Built in Fargo, North Dakota, between 1982 and 1984, the Tiger III wasn't just another big tractor. It was one of the most powerful production farm tractors ever made at the time. Beneath its immense green hood roared a 19-liter Cummins KTA 1150 turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel, pumping out a jaw-dropping 470 horsepower. That made it more powerful than nearly anything else in the field, even competing with the legendary Big Buds. Every inch of the Tiger III screamed engineering excess. Its massive articulated frame, full-time four-wheel drive, and 30.5-inch tires gave it unstoppable traction across deep prairie soil and sticky clay fields. It could pull 70-foot cultivators or 60-foot air seeders with ease, work that would cripple lesser tractors. Farmers who saw it in action often said it was like watching a locomotive on rubber tires. The cab, perched high above the massive frame, was built for long days of work and comfort. Air conditioning, sound insulation, and panoramic visibility made it one of the best operator environments of its time. Despite its sheer size, controls were surprisingly refined, allowing precise operation even under heavy loads. But greatness came at a cost. The Tiger III's fuel consumption was monumental, burning through diesel like a jet engine, and its price tag was equally intimidating. With the 1980s farm crisis hitting hard, very few farmers could justify such a massive investment. Steiger's production numbers for the Tiger III remained extremely low, and when Case IH acquired Steiger in 1986, the Tiger line quietly vanished. Today, surviving Tiger IIs are among the rarest 4WD tractors in existence. Some still work on large farms, while others sit in collections, restored to their former glory, symbols of a time when engineers pushed the boundaries of power just to see how far they could go. The Steiger Tiger III wasn't just a tractor, it was a statement. A green, roaring giant that defined the very edge of 1980s agricultural ambition. Built for the bold, remembered by the few, it remains one of farming's most awe-inspiring forgotten machines. Number 8. Ford FW60. By the late 1970s, Ford decided it was time to go big, really big, and so came the Ford FW series, a lineup of heavy-duty articulated tractors that brought blue power to the world of high-horsepower farming. Among them, the Ford FW60, launched in 1979, stood as the most powerful and impressive of them all. Built in collaboration with Versatile in Canada, the FW60 shared much of its DNA with the legendary Versatile 1150, but carried Ford's signature blue paint and branding. Under its long hood growled a 14.8-liter Cummins NTC 855 turbo diesel, pumping out 335 horsepower, a staggering figure for the era. The tractor's articulated 4WD chassis, planetary final drives, and massive 30-inch tires made it a beast on any terrain. Inside, the FW60 offered comfort and sophistication far beyond what most farmers expected. The cab was insulated, air-conditioned, and fitted with wide panoramic windows. The controls were intuitive, and the ride, thanks to its huge frame and long wheelbase, was surprisingly smooth for a 20-ton tractor. The FW60 excelled in one thing: pulling power. It could drag massive implements through sticky clay or dry plains with ease. Farmers across North America quickly learned that it could replace multiple smaller tractors, saving both time and manpower. However, its size made it unsuitable for smaller farms, and its fuel thirst meant it wasn't cheap to run. Ford's FW series ended in the mid-1980s, replaced by the Genesis and later New Holland designs. But the FW60 remains one of the greatest heavy-duty tractors Ford ever put its name on, a symbol of the brand's engineering ambition during the golden age of horsepower. Today, the FW60 is a collector's dream, especially among Ford enthusiasts. Few machines from that era combined such raw strength, iconic styling, and historical importance. It wasn't just a tractor, it was Ford's declaration that it could stand shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in the 4WD world. Number 9. Deutz D16006. In Germany, the Deutz D16006 represented the country's ambitious attempt to compete in the growing global market for high-horsepower, four-wheel drive tractors. Built between 1970 and 1975, the D16006 was a bold green powerhouse that showcased the precision and durability German engineering was famous for. It was part of Deutz's 06 series, which included smaller models that became European bestsellers. But the D16006 was something else entirely. It was big, heavy, and built for one purpose: power. The D16006 was equipped with a massive Deutz V8 air-cooled diesel engine, displacing over 11 liters and producing around 160 horsepower. It featured an articulated 4WD chassis, giving it incredible traction on uneven ground and making it suitable for large-scale European farms that were starting to adopt bigger machinery. The tractor's design was industrial and aggressive. A long hood, squared-off lines, and huge tires that made it look ready for battle. Despite its capability, the D16006 struggled to find its place in the market. European farms, especially in West Germany, were still relatively small compared to the sprawling operations of North America. Few farmers needed such a large, expensive machine. Those who did found it powerful but thirsty. And its air-cooled engine, while innovative, was loud and unconventional compared to the liquid-cooled competitors. By 1975, Deutz shifted its focus to smaller, more practical models and later introduced the modern Deutz Fahr line. The D16006 quietly disappeared, its existence barely noted outside enthusiast circles. However, it paved the way for future European 4WDs by proving that high-horsepower machines had a place in Europe, just not yet. Today, the D16006 is a collector's dream, not because it was common, but because it was so rare. Only a handful were built, and fewer survive. It remains one of the great forgotten European 4WD tractors, a green giant that was too far ahead of its time to succeed. Number 10. Bray 465. Before the big brands perfected 4WD technology, a small British engineering company named Bray decided to experiment. The result was the Bray 465, one of the earliest examples of a four-wheel drive tractor built in Britain. Developed between 1967 and 1970, it was based on the popular Nuffield 465 two-wheel drive tractor. But Bray engineers transformed it into a full 4WD powerhouse, using a mix of ingenuity and brute mechanical force. The tractor used a BMC 38TD diesel engine, producing about 65 horsepower, but the magic was in its drivetrain. Bray added a driven front axle connected via a transfer box, allowing all four wheels to pull simultaneously. This setup dramatically improved traction, especially on muddy British fields where 2WD tractors often struggled. The conversion also raised the tractor's stance, giving it an aggressive and purposeful look, something British farmers hadn't seen before. In the field, the Bray 4 was impressive. It offered better pulling power, smoother performance on slopes, and much better traction in wet conditions. However, it was also heavier, more expensive, and mechanically complex. Maintenance was tricky, and the small-scale nature of Bray's operations meant parts weren't easy to source. Only a handful were ever built before production ceased in 19. Despite its obscurity, the Bray 465 deserves credit for its innovation. It proved that small British manufacturers could think outside the box and compete with larger firms. In many ways, it laid the groundwork for later British 4WD icons like County and Roadless. Unfortunately, its timing was poor. The big players soon released mass-produced 4WD tractors that overshadowed Bray's hand-built machines. Today, the Bray 465 is a rare collector's item, a forgotten gem from a time when tractor builders were unafraid to experiment. It may have been small and short-lived, But it helped spark the movement that turned 4WD from an experiment into an essential part of modern farming. They were the giants of their time, machines built with courage, grit, and imagination. Each one carried the dreams of its engineers and the power to change farming forever. But progress doesn't wait. As new technology came, these once mighty tractors were left behind, their stories buried in barns, rusting quietly beneath the dust of decades. Yet even forgotten, they still matter, because every 4WD tractor working today owes something to these experiments, to the builders who dared to go too far, too soon. If you loved this journey, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who still believes old iron never dies. Because these weren't just tractors, they were legends. Born in an age when power met passion and farming became engineering.